Hi folks, welcome to the online business planning program for community resource centres here on Westlink. Today we're going to go into action planning in detail, and in doing that we're going to be joined by a fabulous team here. John Denton, great to have you on board again.
Thank you, Andrew, great to be here.
And today we're joined by Lee Steele, Coordinator of the Pingelly CRC and also Chair of the Association of WA Community Resource Centres. Lee, welcome aboard.
Pleasure to be here, thanks for having me.
Thanks for making the journey up. It's going to be a great episode.
Yes, hope so.
Out a doubt. So we're into episode 7 today of the 10 module program, and today we're going to be looking at the actions that you need to be able to implement in your business plan, and in doing that also being able to develop a time frame associated with those, a budget associated with those, and importantly, who are going to be the people responsible for making that happen. So we're really getting to the pointy end of things, I would suggest, in today's episode. And remember, as we go through, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to make sure you complete the workbook section and put it across into your business planning template. John, I'm really looking forward to this episode. We're going to get down and dirty into some real detail here. We've got some great examples from Lee. So if I can hand over to you now, you can have the remote. That's power, man.
Whoa.
You ready for it?
I am.
All right.
Let's go.
Bring it on.
Do a quick recap of the last episode. In the last episode, we went through clarifying project prioritisation to get some idea of which were the key projects for the CRC to tackle. And then with Ros's help from the Department of Regional Development, we looked at linking those projects to the DRD outcomes. So obviously it's very important from a funding point of view to make sure that the projects do match the outcomes that DRD are looking for. And then we talked about project benefits and measures, and Andrew, you had your usual little rant about the importance of knowing what the benefits of your projects and activities are and how to measure them.
Absolutely, and making sure other people know about the benefits as well.
Well, that's right. So that's a great way of promoting the CRC and what the CRC does. So that's what we covered last episode. This time we're going to now look at the action plan in detail and connecting those projects to the actions that have got to be implemented. It's all very well having great projects and activities, but unless somebody actually takes actions, then of course nothing happens. So we're going to be looking at how to connect those actions in and put a time frame on it. Again, it's very important when you're planning your projects to work out what time is going to be needed for the projects. And of course, taking into account that you're going to be running a lot of projects concurrently. So again, that timing, be realistic with your timing. And the budget. Of course, there's going to be a cost to doing all of these things as well. So it's very important to work out the costs. And again, that's going to go into the sourcing of funding from DRD and other sources as well. Then we're going to look at DRD grants and how the grants work in terms of connecting up with those different key projects. And that's DRD grants under the Financial Assistance Agreement. Lee, would you like to say a few words about the Financial Assistance Agreement?
The Financial Assistance Agreement is a contract that's signed between the Department and each CRC, which allows the delivery of funding into us under certain criteria. Those criteria are very clearly outlined in our agreements, and they meet all the outcomes that are required for the funding.
Thank you, and there's more information about that in the business planning template as well. And then, of course, you need people to make projects happen. So we're going to be looking at who's going to take ownership and be responsible for those projects. So we've got quite a lot to do today. And Andrew, would you like to talk us through connecting all these things up?
Sure would. And that's the whole idea of today is really about connecting it up. And if you look at your business planning template and look at this slide we're about to put up on the screen now, it shows that there is a lot to join in terms of joining those dots. Like John mentioned, the key outcomes, the project descriptions, and then there's all this other stuff on the right-hand side of that. And that's where we're really going to work on today. So we'll take you through an example now to help us get connected with our connections.
And this is page 5 to 7 of the business planning template.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
So in this case, we'll go back to the example we had from the previous episode where we were talking about the priority project being community events. So we start off by looking at the key outcome that connects to, and in this case it's building the capacity of the local community. Then we need to have a project description in there. So I think just putting up community events, to use a technical term, would probably be a little bit lame. So in this case, we thought, let's make sure we have a project description that's clear to us, but also clear to the people who we're pitching this to. So in here, if we look back at the description, it says initiate community events to connect people and build their skills and knowledge of issues directly affecting them to enable them to make positive change. And that connecting people is a really important thing. And Lee, you've mentioned this to us before, that it's almost a byproduct, but it's also a clear focus for a lot of your events.
It's a core driving factor within our CRC. To bring our community together, to allow the capacity to build, is one of the most important functions that we believe we do in our community.
So often the event itself can really just be the draw card to bring those people in.
Yeah, absolutely. And often we may do it for one specific reason, but then we end up finding that it meets other criteria of the funding. For example, if it might build the capacity, but at the same time it may upskill people and it may provide promotion and marketing for our CRC. So it ticks a number of boxes, even though we may not have intended to set out to do that.
Yep. And I've heard people term it as it's just creating the space to bring people together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think often CRCs on a whole do it without even realising that they're often doing it on a level every day.
Fantastic. So let's work through this a bit now. If we were going to put our community event together, here's some of the steps we'd have to do. So looking here, I'll work through some of the actions, and that first one is to identify the events. And that sounds simple, but I think there's a lot more complexity to that in terms of understanding what it is the community really needs to help them, and when's probably going to be the best time to do that. So that scheduling events is a really important thing in a lot of communities, especially given you're in a regional community. At the moment there's things like harvesters coming up. If you're working in a rangeland community, we're up north, mustering is probably a key time you're going to have to work around. So it's thinking about what are the key times that you will be able to get people to it, and when is you've got zero chance. And school holidays will be another one that comes into that. Moving on is in the easy part of designing your event. Who do you want to have there? How are you going to go about it? What are going to be exciting things that are going to make their day? And then getting to the promotional strategy, thinking about who's a target market I want to get here, what's the media I'm going to use to attract them, and what's the key message I'm going to get that's really going to grab them and excite them and bring them on in. And finally, the easy part is you just got to run it. How hard can that be?
It's the fun part.
Correct. It's always. So let's just look at this in summary. If you were doing your action planning here, the key thing here if you're going to look at the action of identifying your events, you need to think of a time frame to do that in. And here we've got an example of, say, 2 months to get an understanding of what the community needs are and make that come together. You need to think about what budget is required there, which are the DRD grants that it's going to connect to, and importantly, who are going to be the people who's going to make this happen. Lee, I want to hear some real practical experience from you now in terms of an event that you've run down at Pingelly, perhaps a community event, and tell us what are some of the actions that you had to put in place to make that happen?
I'd like to go back about 6 months when we ran a series of events called Business After Dark. We recognised that business was really struggling in the community and that we needed to introduce some excitement and some shop local policies. So to do that, we first of all canvassed our businesses and asked them if they were even interested, because like they say, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. They were all keen and they were very interested more in the networking opportunities and to see how they could all work together to promote Pingelly as a good place to shop. So first item we did was we actually didn't hold an event, we just held a cup of coffee session and we got them all together to determine what to do. That made it so much simpler when we knew what they wanted and we were able to work with them to get that to happen. So once we identified what the event would be, we then set about working out who we could partner with to deliver that information and how best to host it so that it was in the environment that they were interested in having. We then went ahead and we met with Small Business Development Commission, we met with the local shire, and we met with the Wheatbelt Development Corporation, and we asked them what they had available that we could use. Our first option is always, if we can get it free, let's use it, and that's where we go. CRCs are renowned at knowing how to do those sorts of things. So we found those partners, and then we set about working out how long it would take to get going, how we would advertise it, and how much it was going to cost. We decided on 3 sessions because we didn't think that after 3 we could hold the attention of everybody, and that we could always host it again in the coming year if it was successful. We then set about we set our calendar up, we set the dates that were available, we made sure that it met the majority of our intended audience. We also looked at the seasons that were coming and their busy times, and we identified the time that best suit them in the evening, which was actually after 5 o'clock, not at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So we set our calendars, and then we put our promotion in place. We sent personal invitations out to them. We advertised in the paper in case there were people that we missed, and word of mouth, where every time we spoke to a local business, we reminded them. Our main marketing campaign was really word of mouth. Make sure you come, it's going to be really great, and there'll be nibbles and drinks afterwards. Once we had worked out our budget, which was, I must admit, wasn't very high because we used some promotional funding from our FAA agreement to help fund that because we were promoting the CRC, and the Small Business Development Corporation put a few dollars in to help us host the evening and provided the guest speakers for free. So once we got it all together, we delivered it. We ran 3 very successful events, and I would have to say the greatest outcome we had was the capacity in the community, because those business people that are so busy during the day and don't get to talk all the time actually got the opportunity to speak, and they created perhaps not alliances but understanding of where each of their businesses were in the community.
Fantastic example, and just the way you've gone about it right from the start to find out how do you guys want to do it, rather than
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the key things in our small communities, is to make sure that we are in tune with what's happening there. We could have introduced a knitting club or something, but that wasn't the need. I'm not saying that it's not the need in some communities, but in ours it wasn't. So each CRC should set about finding out what it is they really need to be doing.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
John, I reckon you're champing at the bit to hear some more examples from Lee.
I think that's absolutely fantastic. Lee, have you got an example where, against the DID outcome, deliver services and information on behalf of government agencies?
Yep, I'm excited by what we do, and I'm always happy to share that.
Great.
We also recently recognised that our clubs were going to start to suffer because the responsible serving of alcohol requirements came in, and our local town wasn't ready for that. We then set about working out how we could introduce those certificates into our community, because our volunteers are our biggest asset in our town, and their major fundraising is with their events and through the alcohol and the subsidiary things they sell on those days. So we met with 3 core clubs in town and determined that yes, they were interested. We met with several businesses in town and decided that we would put a plan in place. So we set forward, and we recognised that that would deliver services, information and capacity all at the same time.
Fantastic. So it covered off more DID outcomes than just the one.
I actually genuinely believe that for a number of years we weren't recognising that we were actually ticking more than one box. We were so focused on going, okay, what can we do for this section, that we ticked that box for that. But when we went back and looked, we realised that it actually ticked quite a few boxes. And I think there would be very few things that we run in our CRCs that wouldn't tick more than 2 or 3 boxes.
Fantastic. One of the things I think some of the CRCs struggle with a little bit is actually raising the profile and image of the CRC. So marketing, if you like, or just getting known in the community.
Yep. That would be, it's one of those, you've got to gauge what it is that your community actually wants from you. We actually set about creating individual relationships with organisations in town, and we also make a point of making sure that I know it sounds a bit trite, but we have a checklist every year. Have we touched base with this club? Have we invited them in for a cup of coffee to see how they're going? Can we offer some assistance to them? So our goal is to make sure that we have that audio relationship with them, so that we're actually talking to them, we're not actually assuming things. And once we got into that mode, they actually walk in our door now and go, we're thinking of doing this, what can you do, or can you do this to help us? So it's building that relationship on a base level that's very important.
Absolutely. It's all about relationships, isn't it? I mean,
It is, yeah, and trust. Like, they now know that we're there to help, and they accept that that's our role in the community, and they don't abuse us or use us, they work with us. They don't come in and go, we need you to do, they just say, how can you help now? So I think that's a really good position to be in your market, in your local town, is to make sure that you're the place they come for advice, not necessarily to do everything.
Yeah, and I mean, any business is built on relationships and trust, so it was great to hear those words. They're key words in any organisation. And you talked about developing partnerships and negotiating opportunities for the CRC to work with businesses. You've mentioned a few of those. Do you have any more examples on that front?
We recently worked with a regional body. In the last year and a half, we've been working with Repay WA. We had a issue in town where we had a number of people who had community service hours that they had to work, and it was becoming more and more difficult, and they were being caught up in the hamster wheel of going round and round but not being able to work the hours to get out of the system. So we met with Repay WA and asked them what it was that they would need if we were going to be able to assist these people. And then once we got that information, it was very easy then to go to the community and identify the people who could help us deliver that. All they were after were community hours. We spoke to our local townscape group who do a lot of work around town, and they had a big project in mind that they could use some muscle and some support with. So they then set about saying, this is what we need to do. However, we can't afford to buy the limestone bricks and stuff at the moment. So we introduced them. We didn't actually write a fund, but we introduced them to the Bendigo Bank, who had some money in their community chest, and they got their equipment and supplies funded, and then we became the admin support for that organisation. So the Repay WA clients would come in, log in with us in the morning. We would do all the paperwork required for the department to ensure that they were adequately met all their requirements, and then they would be picked up and taken to the job. It was a really great outcome, and we ended up with outcomes that we hadn't intended. We actually had outcomes where people in the community who had been struggling on some levels took ownership. That was their Apex Park that they worked on. No one was going to vandalise that anymore. So those extra outcomes were the things that really are that CRC. That's what we're all about, bringing that local ownership to our community.
Yes, I can see from your face it's very rewarding, and
That's why we open the doors every morning.
fantastic. And we've covered most of the DRD outcomes, but I think one of the very important ones as well is the governance and maintaining very high standards of governance.
Yes, that is.
What are some of the things you do there, Lee?
We looked at that on two levels, because when we first received the FAA opportunities to get funding, we realised that our governance perhaps wasn't anywhere near where it should be. So our first plan was to upskill ourselves and our committee to understand what good governance was, and to learn the benefits of it and then be able to work with that. So to that end, we had a number of board members attend some of the training opportunities that were delivered by the department. We also got some facilitators in using our governance FAA funding. And then once we got that baseline, we then decided that the difference that it made to our organisation and how much happier we were and how much better the board worked because they all understood their roles, we then decided that that would be the next governance thing to flow out. So whilst we were upskilling ourselves, we then made strategic decisions that we would all partner with an individual organisation in town. We would go to their board meetings, and so we got a flow-on effect. Even though the funding that we received from governance predominantly came to us, we then allowed that flow on to go to other organisations in our community who also benefit, and now we can see the difference in our community. People want to be on boards again. We struggled to get treasurers and secretaries, and now there's a clear outline that's made a real difference.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I know we're going to be talking about that a little bit more in the next episode. The other key part of going through this detailed planning exercise, of course, is to work out what the budgets are going to be for all these activities. So when you're working through the 7 columns in your business planning template, pages 5 to 7, turn the budget component into dollars as well, because there's a financial plan on page 8 of the template which you need to complete. So it's a case of estimating what the different projects are going to cost, putting that into the financial plan, and then of course putting all your fixed costs in there as well. So there are what in business terms are called fixed costs, which are the things that you're going to have to pay just to open the doors of the CRC. So you've got to pay the rent, you've got to pay your electricity, your overheads, your staff. So all those things need to go into the financial plan as well. So once you've gone through and done your detailed action plan and worked out what the budgets are for all the different actions, then you can complete on page 8 the financial plan.
Can I just add a comment there, if that's okay?
Absolutely, please do.
I think it's really important that we don't undercost our costs in our CRC. Don't write them down to be cheap. We do pay rent, or we do pay power, and we pay insurance, we pay wages. Make sure that you truly value those. Don't just estimate it. When you actually look at it and you put it into a spreadsheet and you do a day in the life of your CRC and you work out what it costs you to just open your doors, really you will be surprised. Make sure that you value it up properly.
Very good point, Lee. And the same with timeframes as well. Don't underestimate.
That's probably our worst thing that we do, is we go, I reckon 2 months, and then 2 months always becomes 3 months. So now we've probably got better at overestimating and coming in under rather than the other way around. However, some events are just driven by a set date. You set a date to do it and it has to happen. So that's when you've just got to put a bit more backbone in and get it there over the line on the day. So
Yeah, so it needs to be realistic, but putting the time frame in there for events which aren't time dependent or don't have a particular date, it's still important to put a time frame and a goal target time on there, because it creates a bit of a deadline and a bit of a motivation to achieve the deadline.
Like ongoing, that's a good one, isn't it, John?
Absolutely. Don't use the term ongoing in your business plan.
Don't hit me. Don't hit me.
Okay, I'm definitely guilty of that occasionally.
Yes, no, that's not a good time frame.
And
So
if I
thank
may
you for
take
that,
the
Andrew.
opportunity, with the time frame, a good way to do that is also put your key time frame days into your calendar on your Outlook, for example, so it pops up and reminds you, don't forget you were going to have this done by today. That's certainly probably the most prompting tool that we have in our CRC, when we turn the computer on and it reminds us what we were meant to be doing.
Absolutely. All very good advice from a very experienced operator, and with some fantastic examples to meet each of the DRD outcomes.
100%. No,
Absolutely.
400% I'm saying today.
Yep.
So it's been great having you on board today, thanks Lee. And today, in this episode, just to unfortunately we're going to have to wrap up. I think we could do 3 episodes and just keep on going. But that'll be ongoing, and that'll make you angry, John, so I don't want to see that.
Oh no.
So today we've had the opportunity to help you to develop actions for your projects. Also with that, connect those actions to time frames and budgets, the people who are responsible, and of course having some great examples here from Lee. And overall this is going to help you to bring all the work you've done so far into a detailed action plan for your CRC. So we're really looking forward to hearing about some of those pretty soon. In our next episode, we're going to be focusing on risk management. That's going to be one of the things. We'll also talk about personnel plans and a few other bits and pieces in between. So we're really actually getting towards the end of this whole program. But certainly encourage you to tune in. Lee, thanks again so much for your time today. It's been wonderful having you on board.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure being here, and
Really?
I really hope it helps someone.
I'm sure it will. Got real value out of your practical examples.
Absolutely.
And John, it's always good to be having you here by my side.
Thank you, Andrew.
So it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
And toodle pip from me.
Thanks everyone. We'll see you
See you
next
on the
week.
next episode.